You think you're free. You believe your nation, your economy, your daily life is solely determined by the choices of your elected officials, or the market forces plastered across the news. Think again. What if I told you that the fate of empires, the price of your gasoline, and the geopolitical dance of superpowers hinges on a mere 1.7-mile wide stretch of water, thousands of miles away? Forget the theatrics of UN speeches or the headlines screaming about trade wars. The true levers of global power are often silent, unseen, and geographically inconvenient. Today, we dissect one such choke point, the Malacca Dilemma. This isn't about news, it's about systems. It's about how geography, an immutable fact of our planet, ruthlessly dictates the foreign policy of even the most technologically advanced states, forcing their hand, shaping the destiny. And in doing so, it subtly, yet profoundly, shapes yours. The Malacca Dilemma is not a hypothetical scenario, it's a living, breathing geopolitical vulnerability that keeps strategists awake at night and fuels naval expansions. It's a stark reality check that even in an age of satellites and cyber warfare, the ancient principles of maritime control remain paramount. We are talking about the Strait of Malacca, a narrow, shallow waterway between the Malay Peninsula and the Indonesian island of Sumatra. To call it a strait is an understatement. It is the jugular vein of global commerce, a pulsating artery through which nearly 1/3 of the world's trade and over half of its seaborne oil passes annually. Think about that, 1/3 of everything bought and sold globally, from consumer goods to industrial components, travels through this constricted passage. And for energy, that figure skyrockets to over 50%. Consider your own life for a moment. Every device you own, every piece of clothing, much of the food you eat, the fuel that powers your commute, trace its origin, and you will inevitably find a connection to the global supply chain. A significant portion of that chain, particularly for economies reliant on East Asian manufacturing or Middle Eastern oil, flows directly through Malacca. Disrupt this flow, even for a short period, and the ripple effects would cascade through every aspect of global civilization, triggering economic paralysis, skyrocketing energy prices, and unprecedented geopolitical instability. This isn't abstract theory, it's an economic and security nightmare scenario that has been gamed out in war rooms for decades. The Malacca Dilemma profoundly impacts China, a nation whose economic miracle and continued growth are inextricably linked to this maritime passage. China is the world's largest importer of oil, and approximately 80% of its oil imports, along with a massive volume of its trade, transits through the Strait of Malacca. For Beijing, this isn't just a trade route, it's an existential lifeline. This immense reliance on a single, narrow, and potentially vulnerable waterway creates what Chinese strategists themselves have termed the Malacca Dilemma. Imagine you are building a magnificent, towering skyscraper, but its entire structural integrity depends on a single, easily severable rope. That is, metaphorically, China's position. Their economic engine, fueled by imported resources and sustained by exported goods, is utterly dependent on uninterrupted access through Malacca. Any disruption, whether due to regional conflict, piracy, terrorism, or the strategic maneuverings of a rival power, would immediately throttle China's economy, imperil its energy security, and challenge the very stability of the ruling Communist Party. This is not hyperbole, it is a cold, hard geopolitical fact. This vulnerability forces China into a strategic paradox. On one hand, its economic survival necessitates peace and open sea lanes. On the other, its desire to assert itself as a global power and secure its interests drives a massive naval expansion, which can, ironically, be perceived as a threat by the very nations bordering Malacca. This tension between dependence and ambition is at the heart of the dilemma. Beijing's awareness of this choke point vulnerability is not new. For decades, Chinese strategists have been searching for ways to mitigate this risk, exploring what they call Malacca bypass options. These include overland pipelines and rail links through Myanmar and Pakistan, connecting China's western provinces to the Indian Ocean. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor (CPEC), a flagship project of the Belt and Road Initiative, with its deep-water port at Gwadar, is a direct response to the Malacca Dilemma. Similarly, oil and gas pipelines from Myanmar's Kyaukphyu port provide an alternative, albeit limited, route for energy imports, bypassing the strait entirely. While these bypasses offer some diversification, they are not a panacea. They are expensive, logistically complex, politically sensitive, and have significantly less capacity than the sea lanes. They also introduce new vulnerabilities. Land-based routes are susceptible to sabotage, political instability in transit countries, and the sheer challenge of maintaining security across vast distances. Thus, despite these efforts, the Strait of Malacca remains the dominant, indispensable conduit for China's trade and energy. But the Malacca Dilemma is not just China's problem. It is a fundamental factor in the geopolitical strategies of the United States and its allies. For the US, control or influence over global choke points like Malacca is a cornerstone of its maritime hegemony and its ability to project power and maintain global stability. The ability to potentially interdict traffic through Malacca provides immense strategic leverage. Consider a scenario of heightened tension or conflict in the Indo-Pacific. The ability of the US Navy and its allies to patrol and, if necessary, restrict access through the Strait of Malacca would represent a devastating blow to an adversary heavily reliant on that passage. This isn't about initiating conflict, it's about deterrence, about shaping the strategic calculus of potential rivals. The presence of US naval forces, coupled with strong alliances with regional powers like Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, serves as a constant reminder of this strategic reality. This leads us to the heart of the systems analysis here. The Malacca Dilemma isn't just about ships and oil, it's about the inherent tension between globalized commerce and geopolitical competition. It forces nations to make difficult choices, invest billions in bypasses that are less efficient, or build a formidable navy to protect vulnerable sea lanes, potentially escalating regional tensions. It's a classic security dilemma amplified by economic interdependence. Geography is destiny, famously stated Napoleon Bonaparte. While he might have been referring to land campaigns, the principle holds even more true for maritime choke points in our interconnected world. The Strait of Malacca is a physical manifestation of this maxim. Its narrowness, its strategic location connecting the Indian Ocean to the Pacific, and the sheer volume of traffic it handles, transform it from a mere waterway into a geopolitical weapon. The implications for international security are profound. Any major incident in the strait, a large-scale oil spill, a major act of piracy, or a deliberate blockade, would trigger an immediate and multifaceted international crisis. Insurance rates would skyrocket, shipping would be diverted via longer, more expensive routes such as around Australia, adding weeks to transit times and billions to costs, and global commodity markets would plunge into chaos. Energy prices would soar, supply chains would fracture, and economies around the world would reel. The stability of the global financial system itself could be threatened. This isn't just a concern for militaries, it's a concern for every central bank, every major corporation, and ultimately, every citizen. We have built a world of incredible efficiency and interdependence, but this efficiency often comes at the cost of resilience. The Malacca Dilemma exposes this fragility with stark clarity. Furthermore, the dilemma creates a complex web of regional dynamics. The nations bordering the strait, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, are acutely aware of its strategic importance and their own roles as custodians of this vital passage. They collaborate on security, counter-piracy efforts, and environmental protection, but they also navigate the delicate balance of not alienating major powers like China or the United States, whose interests converge and diverge in the strait. Their cooperation is essential for its smooth functioning, yet they remain vulnerable to being caught in the crossfire of great power competition. The constant threat of disruption compels all actors to consider worst-case scenarios. For China, it means accelerating naval modernization, expanding its blue water capabilities, and building artificial islands in the South China Sea, partly to project power closer to its crucial maritime lifelines. For the US, it means strengthening alliances, conducting freedom of navigation operations, and ensuring its naval presence remains robust and capable of responding to contingencies. This continuous cycle of action and reaction, driven by the immutable reality of Malacca, fuels a regional arms race and escalates geopolitical tensions. Think about the sheer audacity of it, a natural feature, unchanging for millennia, now holds the fate of modern industrial civilization in its watery grip. It challenges the assumption that technological advancement can overcome all geographical constraints. While satellites can map it and advanced vessels can traverse it, the fundamental bottleneck remains. There is no app, no algorithm, no AI that can widen the Strait of Malacca. This is where the relatability hook comes in. We often feel overwhelmed by global events, by the machinations of governments and corporations far removed from our daily lives. But the Malacca Dilemma illustrates how profoundly interconnected everything is. The stability of a narrow strip of water on the other side of the world directly impacts the price of the goods in your local store, the fuel in your car, and the overall economic health of your nation. Your wallet, your job, your future, they are all, in some small but significant way, tied to the smooth, uninterrupted flow through this choke point. It's a humbling realization. Our advanced, digital world still operates on foundational, ancient principles of logistics and geography. The power to control or influence these choke points remains a kingmaker in global politics. So, what does this mean for the future? The Malacca Dilemma will continue to be a primary driver of naval strategy and infrastructure investment for decades to come. China will persist in its efforts to diversify its supply routes, even as it enhances its naval power projection capabilities. The United States and its allies will continue to emphasize freedom of navigation and strengthen their presence and partnerships in the Indo-Pacific. The stakes are astronomically high. A miscalculation, an act of aggression, or even a severe accident in the Strait of Malacca could trigger a crisis of unprecedented scale, shaking the very foundations of the global economic and security order. The world watches, strategizes, and navigates this critical choke point, knowing that while it facilitates prosperity, it also harbors the potential for catastrophic disruption. In the intricate dance of global power, some stages are grand and visible, others are subtle and hidden. But none are more critical, more silently potent, than the narrow, unassuming Strait of Malacca. It is a constant reminder that for all our technological prowess, the oldest determinants of power, geography and control of access, remain supreme. To command the sea is to command everything, declared Themistocles, the ancient Athenian statesman. While the seas are vast, the command of their most critical narrow passages truly translates into global power in the 21st century. The Malacca Dilemma is not just a problem for China or the US, it is a fundamental vulnerability of our interconnected world system. What are your thoughts on how this critical choke point impacts global power dynamics and potentially your own life? Do you think nations can truly mitigate such a fundamental geographical vulnerability? Share your insights in the comments below, and let's continue to deconstruct the complex systems that govern our world. If you found this analysis insightful, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the hidden mechanics of global power. Your engagement helps us bring these crucial conversations to a wider audience.